My name is Peter, recovered alcoholic. Grateful to be alive and sober and part of the sacred place called Alcoholics Anonymous. Thank you. Congratulations to all the celebrants. The anniversaries about the celebrant, but it's really about showing God off in Alcoholics Anonymous that this place works. If anyone's here and new, like really new, counting days, maybe a couple of weeks or a few months or something, there's something at the very beginning of the book, and they talk about us having about a 75% recovery rate, but interesting line in there, and I say this for anyone who's new, it says, of the 50% who came in, and it says, and really tried, they stayed sober. So I have to ask myself while I'm here, am I really trying to do this? And it doesn't have to be the perfect fourth step and the perfect third step and anything perfect. God doesn't need perfect people. But really giving an effort. I really tried to get drunk. I was usually successful. So I come in here and I need to put that effort in. Dr. Bob says if we chase this with half the zeal we did going out there, we'd be fine. So it really comes down to how bad do I want to get free. So June 23rd, 1988 is when God separated me from alcohol. I'm very grateful for this gift of sobriety. I do have a home group in Boca called No Problems, Just Solutions. I do have a sponsor and worked with 4 sponsees today. I have about 13 right now. So God has me very busy. I was just thinking while Anthony was up here taking his chip, I remember I was part of a group called the Free Spirit Group in Brooklyn, and the only requirement for membership at my home group was a pinky ring, sunglasses, and gold jewelry at this place. The greeters were Joey Bag of Donuts and Frankie Head of Lettuce. Those were the greeters at the doors. Very interesting group. But I remember this guy had told me this. By then I was sober about 5 or 6 years. But at my second AA birthday, I'm taking a chip and giving thanks to the group, and my family was there, and and had speakers, and I sat down and had some cake and coffee, and it was like that. A few years later, as I said, I had about 5 years, some guy came up to me, he says, I walked into my first meeting ever, and you happened to be celebrating, and you had 2 years. And with me, with 1 day, 2 years seemed attainable. Because when you're new and somebody gets up there with 40 years, it's like, how that's like impossible. And that includes weekends, so I don't know if I can do this. But 2 years, he says, was attained. He says, and that anniversary, when I saw you making 2 years, I walked out of there feeling like I might be able to stay sober again. And so we never know what's going to happen in Alcoholics Anonymous. I didn't give any kind of acceptance speech. That was great. I just said thank you to the group and sat down pretty much. But he was able to identify or relate to 2 years isn't that far out. Maybe I can do this. And that guy stayed sober a long time until I left Brooklyn. So these are important nights when we make cakes and take coins, because there's someone who's usually sitting there who is too embarrassed to get up and take a white chip. Because it's a long walk if you're in the back. It's a long walk if you're here to come up here and tell everyone I got 1 day back. That's a tall order. So there's always someone sitting here who wants to get a chip, is too embarrassed, or even 30 or 60 or 90 days is too embarrassed. And then we have cakes. And my experience has been they're exciting. We're seeing someone who's been brought back from the dead and has a whole sober life in front of them. So I'm glad to be here. My assignment is 8, 9, and on the front end, we did a whole lot of work thus far in talking about getting to 8, 9, what that looked like for me. And the bumps in the road, and the mind constantly trying to tear this whole structure down. It will throw up roadblocks. It'll have me think of something that isn't very spiritual, isn't very encouraging, is pretty dark and depressing, and I'll listen to it for a second, and then the mind gives me a whole story behind it to make it really convincing. And the biggest enemy I'll ever fight is me, is my own thinking mind, not the soul. But what Alcoholics Anonymous has allowed me to do, and countless others, is get back in touch with the soul or the spirit, which is perfect, it's divine. It doesn't need to be fixed. And when I'm operating out of that place, I'm traveling light. When I'm not, I'm traveling heavy. So along the way, there were many times, even during the fourth step, where my mind would say, you don't really need to do this much work. There's a lot of heavy lifting. And I'm not writing a sex inventory because I got to share with another man, and I'm not going to go there. There's a lot of icky stuff in there. But if there's a name for it, it's already been done, and probably someone's done it a lot better. But that terminal uniqueness is like, mine is the worst story in the whole world. They're going to throw me out of the room. And how am I going to get to a fifth step? How am I going to knock on a sponsor's door and say, here's my life. Here's all my vulnerability. Here's as transparent as I can possibly be, oh, God has made me. I don't know if I want to take that leap, but we do. Because the Spirit's stronger than me. Next thing you know, I'm sitting down and flushing this stuff out, whether it's in one session or with me. It was like a couple of sit-downs with the sponsor, 3-4 times sitting down, a couple hours at a time. And we're always better on the way out when we're done. I know my very first fifth step, I didn't have any kind of revelations. I didn't feel closer to God. I made the prayer. Thank God from the bottom of my heart that I know Him better, but I was more relieved. And I felt like a part of Alcoholics Anonymous that I can saddle up with the bigger guys now because I did this thing called the fifth step. I had no idea what road was still ahead of me. And we live life forward and understand it backwards. I'm really grateful I didn't know what was ahead of me. Because very, very often, if I stop making plans and designs for me about the road I'm supposed to be on, it takes me away from the truth that I'm supposed to experience, and that's oneness with God. Because I'm too busy planning my own journey. It takes me away from the center. I'm supposed to be there. I'm supposed to have this. This people are supposed to be in my life. I should be married by now. I ought to have kids by now. I ought to be rich and famous. I'm in AA 30 days. How come it didn't happen yet? Hollywood hasn't called yet. And all of that stuff sounds innocent, but it'll really take me down a path that takes me away from the one truth, the only truth, the truth I'm supposed to be saddled up with, and that's God, which is what Alcoholics Anonymous, if you knew, I will tell you, it's either good news or bad news, depending on what side of the fence you're on. This whole thing's about having an experience with a God of your understanding, and nothing less than that great fact. We get a lot of information, but to have a transformation, I need a power outside of me. I need a power bigger than me to have a transformation. I get all this information I'm writing and I'm reading, but the real change comes through God's mercy. Nothing that I've earned. I've done nothing to earn God's mercy, but He's that merciful. And when I show up, if you will, to the altar or to Alcoholics Anonymous with the real desire to get well, where desperation screams louder than the ego, and I'm willing to do anything, even though I don't know what anything entails. I'm just going in. Go through the door. I'm going through. I don't care what's on the other side. I can't stay here anymore. Something happens to a guy like me, to people like us. Whether it's in 90 days or 30 days or 6 months or a few years, it happened. The events are beginning. The pilot light's been turned on. And you might be sitting here with 3 or 4 days. You're here. You didn't drink today. This is a major event. And we get into comparing. See, the process of recovery for me has never been linear, but more transformational. But I'm sitting here with a linear point of view saying, well, I only got 30 days, man. And I'm forgetting I haven't had a drink in 30 days. This is huge. And then I start to touch, it's not me who's keeping me sober, although my ego wants to take credit for it. It's not me who's keeping me sober. Something has me glued to a chair in a meeting called Alcoholics Anonymous without drink. I haven't drank before, and I'm going to get home and not drink. This is a huge event because those days add up to years. There was a woman, Marion Cleary, she's passed on, and she was used to come to my old home group in Brooklyn. And she was making 30 years. And I had maybe 1 year, year and a half. This was like unbelievable. She says, honey, why don't you give me the coin tonight? And I says, I got to ask you a question. I said, I'm new. How do you do this that long? She says, 1 day at a time. She says, I had 1 day a long time ago. And then she says, one night was really pretty. That's how she finished. You got 10 days, you're sitting in here, and you see a new white chipper come in who's got 1 day. Tell them how you got 10 days. Put yourself to work. Put yourself to work. Here's how I did 10 days. I made a meeting, 2 meetings a day, and I hang out with that crowd over there. I don't hang out with this crowd over here, because they collect white chips. We don't want to collect white chips. Very often on this journey, part of this awakening we talk about, especially in 8 and 9, which I'm hoping God gets me to soon, circumstances. I think because I'm sober, circumstances out there will change, but they may never change. But if I find myself in the same place over and over again, dating the same type of people, hanging out with the same type of people, and always getting jammed up and into trouble and relapsing, it's not them. What I need is a change in heart or an awakening to get a different perception, a different set of conceptions on where I am, and be able to see truth, to have a level of discernment on a spiritual level. Not just a regular level of discernment of left and right and up and down, but on a spiritual level, which will contradict everything my head is telling me. I need a change of heart. We look at the planet out there right now. It's an ugly place. More hate than I've ever seen before. A politician is not going to fix that. It might help. The hearts are broken. We've lost it. We've lost our way. And I come into alcohol times, I've lost my way. And regrets weigh a ton. Discipline weighs an ounce. Am I willing to be disciplined to a spiritual life? The road gets really narrow. And at the beginning, it's incredibly uncomfortable. I can't get away with what I used to. It's too painful. It's a narrow road. And I even feel like I'm the only one on the road, on a spiritual path, on a narrow road. Sometimes I feel like I'm the only one doing this thing. I'm the only one who's in my book, who's going to mass, who's making meetings, who's hearing fifth steps, and no one else. They're all going to the party. And we don't hear about them anymore. And I meet other fellow travelers on the narrow road, and I realize it's crowded with like-minded folks, shoulder to shoulder. I'm not alone anymore. It's a beautiful walk. How free do I want to be? My lineage has always talked about amends. Do I believe making amends or not making amends has anything to do with me drinking again or not? How can I enter the world? I speak for myself, enter the world of the Spirit we talk about in step 10 when I'm still plagued by what happened yesterday. How can I live now knowing how I lived yesterday? I'm suffering from the pain of the past right now. I'm operating out of the past. I still have a lot of shame and guilt and remorse and those skeletons in the closet. I hope they never come out, but I come into AA and I front like everything's okay, but I got a lot of stuff going on. And if he or she walks in, I'm walking down the block and I see them, oh my God, I'm not free. I toss and turn at night with regrets and remorse and fear of the future. If that comes up, if these people call. How can I possibly say I'm living in a world of the Spirit when it's loosey-goosey and I'm traveling light? I'm not. My misdeeds always put me in a position of pain right now. So I get free. 4 through 9, I have found is really, for me, a death to self-will and life to the Spirit. The process is always subtraction. It's not addition. I don't need anything. I popped out of Mama July 14th, 1959. God says, here's all the tools you need. Go live life. Go have fun. I didn't look at the doctor and say, make me an alcoholic. I want to be homeless. I didn't check that box. God says, here's all the tools. Go have fun. And what I did was I start to accumulate stuff. And put God's tools on the shelf, and I need more money, property, and prestige, so to speak. I need more approval. I need more of everything. And I come into Alcoholics Anonymous, and I feel like I'm empty, but really the emptiness is a lot of toxic stuff. I'm a toxic dump. I got tons of stuff on me. It just feels empty. And so what this work does is take a big, sharp knife and start cutting away till it hurts. There's many times on this journey, I can't do this anymore. One more inventory and taking my inventory when I want to blame you is too painful. How many more prayers do I have to make? How much more time in meditation? And I don't like holding up a mirror to me, but it's necessary. The road narrows, but something happens when we break through that wall. It's like, why'd I wait so long? I've never been freer. I'm not plagued by the voice of the past. That little baby doesn't have to write inventory. Isn't that cool? Yeah, perfect. Yeah, yeah. So I come out of step 7. I think I said this a couple of weeks ago. My sponsors, all of them had us, not that this is the only way to do it, it's just how they did. It's the flavor they showed me, is we would sit with 6 and 7 for a couple of days to see if we were really willing to let go if anything else came up, and that's what we would do. 6 and 7 and sit with that. And then we create an 8-step list. And so I found step 8 is almost like to get ready to go out there and repair the damage in my life. It's a bit of a preparation step where I'm praying for willingness and I'm creating this list. And so what I did was I looked at my 4th step. Now, some of us do a 4th step, and on that 4th step, we write harm's cause as we're going along. I wasn't brought up that way. What we did was we went back to the list. And again, this is not right or wrong. And then we look at each inventory and harm caused here, harm caused there, and we created this list. And I thought, once I went through my old 4th step and listed all the people and harms I caused, I was done with the list. I've gone through the work many, many times, and sometimes people show up still. And even on the first 8-step list, there are going to be people that God's going to give me. I will simply remember that go on that list that I wasn't even resentful with. I just hurt them. I stole. You know, I have no problem with you, but you left your wallet there and there was money in it, so it's coming home with me. I'll mail the wallet back to you, minus the money. You know, that kind of thing. Or we used to take these things at the 8-tracks, the cassette things in the portable thing you go on the dashboard. What they call? What do you call it? 8-track. Oh, you stole too? Thank you. Okay. We used to take those, you know, and sell them on the street. Now, the ones I took, I didn't even know the person. There was no resentment there. But it was a harm caused because I've had stuff stolen from me. So these people went on the list, and my job in step 8 was to pray for willingness to make amends to every single person on that list. Every person, no matter what walk of life, no matter how much danger I might put myself in going to make amends, I had to get willingness to go to see every single person. Step 9 was going to tell me when to do so would injure them or others. But my preparation was to get into a spirit of willingness to see everyone. And some of those I was balking at. It was really uncomfortable. But that was my assignment, so I began to pray for willingness to God. Please give me the willingness to see everyone on this list. So I have this list, and I have a whole bunch of names, and this is before social media. It was a little bit more difficult, actually a lot more difficult to get in touch with people you haven't seen in a while. You can pretty much find a lot of people on social media nowadays. And so I would write down on an index card or a sheet of paper the person's name, if I had contact information, and what harm was caused. And a lot of these folks, I had no idea how to get in touch with them. It was, you know, John or Mary, and this was the harm caused, and that's all I had. And my sponsor says, well, God will give it to you, so why don't we go to God about this and start praying? If it's your will, please put this person in my life. And so I started praying, and I remember taking like 10 names for about 2 weeks and praying for willingness to see these 10 people. And then little by slowly moving down that list. And there was one person on the list. Our big book talks about how to approach the man we hated will arise. There was one person on that list. A lot of us have one or several on that list, people we don't want to see. And just a little backstory. This was a gentleman, he was a landlord, that I rented a room from. And how I was able to get this little studio apartment was not any merit by me. My dad gave him the first month and the last month, found a place for me, and bought me a TV and a bed because Mr. Big Shot was busy getting drunk and in and out of treatment. So I get this little apartment, and I quickly wasn't paying rent. And my dad would show up like the cavalry and pay the rent. And then my dad got some Al-Anon muscles and stopped paying the rent. And then I was taking everything out of the place. I took the TV out. I had a little low boy kind of refrigerator. I tried to carry it out. It was too heavy. My dad had bought me some nice clothes and shoes, and he figured if I dressed nice, I'd feel better about myself, and that would appeal to me more than drinking. That's how naive my dad was about alcoholism. So I took the shoes and the boxes and the clothes in the garment bags and hustled them and sold them on the street. That's what kind of person I was. When I got thrown out of there, the sink was clogged up and the water turned green, and it was filthy. There was no sheets and pillowcases and a comforter on the bed. It was a bloodstained soiled mattress, and with cigarette holes in it, and like that. And I'm existing and arguing with the landlord pretty often, sneaking in at all hours of the night. There are a few times I did a little too much of something, and I'm staring out of a peephole for like 2 days. That's always fun. I know they're there. And after enough episodes, he threw me out. Almost burned the place down one time. And when he threw me out, he was very vulgar about it. He called me everything under the sun. I mean, just vulgar. And I wanted to seek revenge on the guy. Okay. What I didn't know was when I would disappear for like days at a time, that my dad had gone there looking for me. And the landlord's wife said, your dad was here looking for you. And he was like emotional. He had fear in his eyes. Whereas my son, I realized the impact of my illness on other people. So he threw me out. And fast forward, I'm sober. And I was dating my ex-wife and sitting in a restaurant on a Sunday afternoon having something to eat. And I didn't even order yet. I had just sat down, and I happened to look across the room, and there was this landlord standing there with a buddy of his. They were having some sort of family get-together in this restaurant, and he's eyeballing me from across the room. When your heart starts pounding and you feel your face go flush like you're busted. Well, the appetite went out the window. And I told the waitress I need to leave. And she thought something was wrong. I don't feel good. I need to leave. I wasn't feeling good. This was awful. I'm still in bondage. My past still owns me. I'm not free. I'm making these. I'm doing all these things. I am not free. How can I live now knowing how I lived then? It showed up face to face with me. How do I get past this? And I have nothing but venom for this man. How to approach the man we hated will arise. I'm not going to approach him. And I call my sponsor, and he says, wouldn't you be talking about you if you saw you in a restaurant? You owe the guy money. You owe the guy an amends. You need to sit with the guy. And I wasn't ready. And he said, well, we need to pray and write some more inventory on this. So I follow instructions. Thank God God's made me obedient. I wrote more inventory, ton of prayer for forgiveness and acceptance, and forgiveness and acceptance. I start saving some money. I owed him a nice $1. And I take money out of my paycheck each week and put it in an envelope and tuck it in a drawer. And one morning after prayer, got showered and shaved, and I was getting dressed. Pants, slacks, and a sport jacket. And I knew where I was going because God said, now. And the ground was fertile. It was time to go. Now, a day later, a day shy, it may not work. But this was the time. The ground was fertile. God says, go. And I was always told to suit up and show up. Not to, if I have an appointment, I'm going to go see somebody to make amends. Amends means change. Means I've changed too. I'm not going to show up looking like I commit a felony in about an hour after this amends is over. I'm going to suit up and show up. My Sunday best, if you will. I'm representing here. We're agents for God. How am I doing? So my sponsor, you dressed the part. One of my heroes is a guy named Pat Riley, and they just gave a basketball coach, and they just gave him a monument in L.A., and he said something which I love. He said, I wish the coaches would get dressed, because now they dress like they're ball players. He says it's leaders and people with authority should dress that way. Well, I'm going with God's authority. I ought to dress for an amends. And that's just for me, no one else in this room. I don't have the only way. So I show up to this guy's door, and his wife let me in, and she was really surprised to see me. And we had some conversation. She was very pleasant. Now, back in the day, she had a little daughter who was much bigger now, and she was pregnant, and she had a little one. And her husband was still kind of cold and stoic. He wasn't warm and fuzzy, but he did let me come into his house and sit down, and we had a conversation. I took the money out of my breast pocket, and I told him, I'm a member of Alcoholics Anonymous. I've been sober this long. I've harmed you while I was here. And I had this conversation. I also have some financial restitution. If there's anything I've left out, you need to tell me. If there's more money, I stand ready to fix it. I was wrong. I brought nothing but havoc to your life. It doesn't look like that for me anymore. What can I do to make this right? We had this conversation. And his wife got real emotional. She started crying, and that's when she told me the story about my dad. And they were both pleased my life had changed. They weren't afraid of me. And when I say afraid of me, not that like I was going to do a stick up. I'm not that guy. But I brought my disease into their living room, if you will. And now God allowed me to show up like a sober gentleman and have a cup of coffee like a person, like a gentleman. And so when I left, my life changed. Now, our book talks about how to approach the man we hated will arise, and sometimes the most difficult ones, I'm paraphrasing here, turn out to be the most beneficial. That is a huge understatement. Because if I didn't make this amends, I would not experience what I'm about to tell you. And I've shared this story from a million podiums. I never do it justice because you can't really there's no adjectives to describe God. We have God, okay, we got it. And then we tell stories and miracle stories about God, but we know inwardly that didn't do it. It was greater than that. That's God. I didn't know what was about to happen to me because I was walking down the steps leaving his house, and that's all I remember other than one thing. When I got to the sidewalk, my car was down the block, something happened. I couldn't feel my shoes touching the concrete. This was very clear. And then something happened as if I was shot up with this light, like I was enveloped in this yellow-white light. And if I tell you euphoric, that's not doing it justice. I can't even explain it. And I wasn't thinking, oh my God, I'm having an experience. I can't wait to go to home group. There was no time and space. We talk about rocket into a fourth dimension. It's kind of like that. There's no time, there's no calendar, there's no space. You're present, but you're not. And I remember my eyes watered up with like tearful joy, tears of joy. And I don't remember getting to the car. And I don't remember driving home. What I do remember is putting the key in the door. And as if all the weight that was on my back was gone. I was euphoric. I was light. All the problems that I thought were problems prior to making that amends, the rent, the bills, the credit cards it was like meaningless. It's nothing. It's life. It's just life situations. It was one of those moments, those God winks, where we know we're known by our Creator. If I didn't make that amends, I wouldn't have that story to tell you. My life may not be the same. We just don't know. God was prepping me, priming the pump to enter the world of the Spirit, and showing me in a story like that, I gotcha. Trust me. This looks scary, looks difficult. It's the boogeyman. There's nobody there. When I do the right thing happens. When it's about me, maybe not. And so I would take people off this list, and I keep making amends. Now, there were a few I wasn't supposed to make. I caused more harm in so doing. One I was pig-headed about. I was driving back from a meeting, and I see some young lady on the steps with two kids, and it was a woman on my list that I dated many years ago that I caused harm to. I'm super AA guy. I can just show up. And when I got there, she was really startled when she saw me. She got very nervous. She pulled her kids in. She says, "My husband's upstairs. You better leave." And I called my spouse. I can't tell you what he called me, but he's had no business going there. He said, "How dare you?" What were you going to talk to her about while her husband's in the house? You didn't know she had a husband on top of her. I had no right to do that. I have no right to save my own skin at someone else's expense. So my walk in Alcoholics Anonymous is to treat women, and anyone who knows this is just, I'm showing God off, not me. Anyone who knows me knows I treat women with respect. I'm not a dirty dealer in AA, never have been. God has just made that because that was that important to me. I never want to be like that again, ever. I practice fidelity to God. I experience God's fidelity in my life. And there were people, when I worked as a longshoreman, I did a lot of stealing, but I couldn't go to my employer and say, I've been stealing because I might implicate a lot of people. And they would be in job jeopardy. I put my dad in job jeopardy. My sponsor says, how much you think you stole in total? I said, I don't know. He's go pray on it. And I came back with the number. It was in the thousands. He's good. Put it back into the universe. And you be the best worker you can be while you're there. Get there early and stay late. Do AA at work. And little by slowly, I stopped paying back money. Poor boxes in church, putting extra money in a basket, putting a 20 under the pile, not to be Mr. Big Shot in AA. Feeding the homeless, giving money to the homeless. And one day I was home and I got something in the mail about the Disabled Veterans of America or something like this. I love our vets. Anyone served this country. Nothing but profound respect. There it is. And I start sending money every time they would send me once a month, put $5, $10, $20, whatever it was. Did this for like 5 years. I got even. Do I still owe the universe? Absolutely. As long as I'm breathing, I owe. But I'm not haunted by the past anymore. I'm not that good, but God is that great. Yeah? I get to travel like, I went to my family, and some of them were challenging, you know. I remember my uncle telling me, I was sitting with my uncle, he says, oh, don't worry about it. It's really no big deal. It's a long time ago. And he says, you still got to go to those meetings. He said, one day you won't need to be able to drink like a gentleman. Trust me, I know. I said, okay, got it, you know. My sponsor encouraged me, but didn't tell me that with my brothers and my dad to walk this out a while. Because, just saying an apology is really in defense of myself. Make me feel better, accept the apology so I'm off the hook. And the amends is change. So I had to walk it out a while. I took that direction, and I'm sober a little bit, and I'm saving money because I had a huge tab to pay my dad back with lawyers, and just a lot. And I saved up a bunch of money. It's unbelievable when you're sober, we can actually save a few bucks. This is unbelievable. And one day I sat with my dad. I asked him if I could have some time. And we sat down, and he was curious why I was so serious, you know. And I began to talk to him, and I went into my breast pocket, and I put it, he said, what is this? I says, I owe you money, and I'm hoping we can work out some kind of deal for all the stuff I did. And my dad pushed the money back, and my first instinct was I just insulted him. Oh no, I made it worse. And he said to me, all I ever wanted was my son back. And my dad wasn't the type of guy to give praise to anyone. He didn't do that. But what he did, and over a cup of coffee across the table, was begin to praise you. And he says, you keep doing what those people tell you to do. When I was in treatment, my dad, when the counselors would tell him, you got to do this, he would say, and very, very upfront, don't tell me how to raise my son. He would sit with the priest, and don't tell me how to raise my son, and you can take you and your God and take a walk. We had a friend who was a detective in the New York Police Department, and he would sit with my dad, Vic, this is, in all due respect, don't tell me how to raise my son. He was very clear about that. During that amends conversation, he basically said, you raised me, because he trusted you, because of the walk you allowed me to have in Alcoholics Anonymous. And when I sat with my brothers, one of my brothers, when I say anything you need to tell me, he told me. He was angry. My youngest brother fell apart and wept. He said, I thought I wasn't going to have an older brother anymore. He said he was so sick. You know, arrests in emergency rooms, and we didn't even know where you were for a long time. I was able to touch, not that I needed to touch it, but to touch it again as to the damage I caused and how important this was to make it right. Suffice to say, my dad and I had a beautiful relationship until he passed, and my brothers and I are close enough. We trust each other. There was a time there was no trust. We trust each other. And over the years, I've made many amends. One took 17 years to make. Couldn't find the person. And through social media, believe it or not, I found it. Another one was 20 some odd years into, I had just moved down here, and this person showed up on social media. Are you Peter Marinelli from 70th Street where I grew up? Oh my God, I thought you were dead. And this woman was on my list. I said, can we talk? We had a conversation, and she said to me, what do you mean you're alcoholic? What is that? So I'm giving her the first step. And she says, you mean you can never drink? I said, no, I can drink. I just can't stop. That's the problem. And while we're talking about this, you know, we make amends here in finances and relationships change. We make relationship amends and finances, and you don't know. The world of the spirit, 1 on 1 doesn't equal 2. And she says, I knew it. And she was saying, my husband's like that. And I've tried to hide his wine bottles, and he almost beat me up a few times, and he trashes the house. Would you want to talk to him? I said, absolutely. I knew this is why I'm making this amends. And she called me about a week later. She says, listen, it got really bad. He beat me up. When I told him, an old friend got in touch with me and blah, blah, blah. And he's in AA. So I wish you well. And that was the end of that. I don't know what happened to that. I got a lot, sort of like many of us in this room, a lot of amends story that changed our life. 1 on 1 doesn't equal 2 here. But we trust the path of God, and we trust this path in the big book, the treasure map, to take me to the treasure called God. And we get on the other side, somewhere in those amends. This is coming from my story. Somewhere in those amends, you wake up one day, you say, I am free of me. There are no more skeletons. I'm not afraid to face people. I can look the world in the eye. I'm not the perfect person. I know I'm broken and flawed. There's a lot of little things that are wrong that I wish would get better in me. But when I look in the mirror, I'm not spitting at the person looking back. I walk, as my dad used to always teach us, head up and shoulders square. I'm able to do that. I give all credit to God. So the question I guess we ask is, where am I currently in amends? What amends could I be making right now without causing more harm in so doing that I'm not? I'll say tomorrow, and then tomorrow is today, and it's too late because I got a drink in my hand. So I've taken this work, you know, as my life depends upon it. I get to travel light on most days, albeit I'm broken and flawed. I know that. That's really okay. God designed the equipment that way. That's all right. It's a greater need for him. I try to please him. And sometimes, Thomas Merton says this, even in my effort to please God, I may not be pleasing God, but in trying to please God, it pleases God. You know, I remember when we were kids in Christmas time, we used to make little cards in school with a crayon. Worst piece of art known to mankind. And I bring it home. My mom would say, oh my God, it's beautiful. Put it up on the refrigerator. Look what he made. People would say, what is it? God's saying she or he's trying. I'm cool with that. That's all I got.
All right,